college football. Again, some tremendous matchups this week, and let's talk to James a little bit about those matchups.
All right, this past week was pretty good. Some things that kind of happened that in the SEC and the ACC that kind of shook up some things. But before we go into that, I want to talk about some of the events and some of the things that the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl is actually involved with. I got a chance to get my green jacket, which I absolutely love. But we had an event on Thursday with Dreams Come True. Can you talk a little bit about that, what the relationship is with Gator Bowl charities?
Well, we have a great relationships with the Dreams Come True team, and we basically bring 12 young people onto our team for the whole year, and they basically serve as ambassadors for us. We welcome them. We have jerseys. We have certain events throughout the year that really culminate on game day, where we honor them. We allow them to interact with the teams, and just a wonderful group of young people that have a great set of parents that really have helped them navigate some pretty tough situations. But very proud of that relationship and just one of the many charities that we support.
One of those young men I'm going to do some help with, so just stay tuned to the channel to be able to look at how you may be able to help or help the other ones come through their stuff. Very, very difficult things. People call me tough. I wore a helmet and hit people. I didn't really have to deal with some of these challenges that these young people are dealing with and their families. So great thing. Love that I'm able to be a part of that, and love that the Gator Bowl is doing that. On to this past weekend, we'll also look at some of the week games. I want to talk about the first one out the gate. Texas, Alabama, big matchup. Is everything all right? Everything all right in Tuscaloosa won, and could that kind of lead to maybe we can get Alabama here in Jacksonville for the Gator Bowl? And is that something that would match what we would like to have here?
Well, losses early in the year, you can overcome that, but no team has ever had 2 losses that's ever advanced to the Final Four. So I think once you get early in the season, I know Alabama's got a pretty easy game this weekend, but they got Ole Miss the next weekend. So it just makes the road that much more difficult. But Texas certainly showed that they belong, and they certainly did all the little things necessary to beat Alabama. But games like that, James, you know as well as anybody, the little things are huge things. Interceptions, drop passes, excellent plays by certain individuals that have to make big plays. Games like that are big play games, and you saw Texas have more than Alabama.
Yeah, Jimbo Fisher always talked about it's a game of inches, and you know, one big play can snowball to another one, and all of a sudden you're in a dogfight. But speaking of Jimbo saw himself lose to Miami, and Miami's a team that we're starting to see. We'll look at some of the predictions, but with the Texas A&M loss to Miami, how does that affect their position in the Gator Bowl as well?
Well, you know, both teams were coming off 5 and 7 seasons last year, so this was a big sort of a game breaker for the 23 season for both these schools. But I was really impressed with Miami, the way they basically out-physicaled Texas A&M, and certainly gave them a path forward nationally, because that's where everybody thinks they are on a national scale to begin with. And certainly Miami showed that they belong. And so Texas A&M is going to have a long road to hoe with some Western opponents, but certainly they've got to get some things straight as far as the little things so that they can be successful this year.
I always joke and say the SEC West is the toughest conference in college football. You have LSU, Bama, Texas A&M, although they're struggling, tons of talent on those teams. Arkansas is getting better. You've got Ole Miss, you've got Mississippi State, and I'm sure Auburn, as well as with a new coach. So a lot of very well-coached teams there with a lot of talent, very physical brand of ball. So it's going to be tough for anybody to come out of there without at least 1 to 2 losses. Moving over, Georgia, you know a little bit about Georgia. They started out kind of slow against Ball State. It's weird because I'm going to talk about a couple blowouts. And to say that these guys started off slow, when you look at the final score, it's kind of like, all right, we may be being too critical, but what is it like when you are the top dog and you're everybody's national championship game? How is that? How tough is that to face week after week?
Well, you're going to get the best shot, and that's what Alabama has been experiencing for years. It's the game they mark for the year, kind of like Texas has done, wanting to go beat them in Tuscaloosa. But you just have to have tremendous leadership, not only from the coaches but from the players, and especially the senior class, those that have really gone through the wars of the SEC play. But I think that's what you have to have. You've got to have a mindset, and I know this term gets overused, but culture. There's a standard, so you're playing to a standard that's been in place for 3 or 4 years. Kirby's done a great job with that, but I think Carson caught a little noise in the system. But people have to remember that's really the first time in maybe 3 years that he's been on the field to play in a meaningful game. So I think people need to cut some of these kids some slack, because even with Milroe at Alabama, I mean, this was the first year he's really had meaningful snaps. You're coming off a Heisman Trophy winner. So I think people just need to chill out, and unfortunately social media does not allow for that. But cooler heads will prevail, and I think you'll see some of these young people rebound and have really great weekends.
Talk about the standard. One of the things that I pick up and I use a lot is the standard is the standard, and the standard's over everything. You know where I got that from? A guy by the name of Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell and Florida State had a pretty good, easier week 2 matchup than they had against LSU, against Southern Miss, who's actually a pretty good ball club. I think they'll probably win their conference if they continue to do what they need to do. They played 102 players. That's a lot of people to play in the game. They won, not the cleanest performance, but when you're playing 102 players, that's to be expected. But did you get a chance to watch Florida State or any other ACC games, or what kind of stood out from those games?
Well, I watched them. I watched North Carolina hang on to beat Appalachian State, and those are games that are very difficult. It's like when Georgia played Georgia Southern. There's not that you can win from that, because you're supposed to beat them, and if you don't beat them by a bunch, people are upset about it. That was kind of a game there. Clemson started off a little rocky against Charleston Southern, but came on and really took care of business in there. I just think you've got some schools. Louisville's playing really well right now, but I think you've got the middle of the pack in the ACC is really a lot stronger than it was in the past, and maybe not quite as great at the top. You've got Florida State that's kind of separated themselves, but we'll find out when they play Clemson, not this weekend, but next weekend. That'll be a big game, obviously.
So that's a good segue. I actually get my first opportunity to rock a green jacket at Clemson versus Florida State. I'm not happy that it's at noon, trying to figure out how to get there logistically. Any pointers, any things that I need to be looking for as a official Gator Bowl representative?
Well, get there early, really early. Especially a 12 o'clock start's difficult because everybody's coming at the same time, as opposed to a night game where people can kind of dribble in, or even a 3:30 start. You have a staggered entry, but this time everybody's going to be showing up at the same time, and you're going to do a lot of walking unless you get a great parking pass. But usually bowl representatives have good credentials and good passes, parking passes. So we'll see. Maybe they'll be able to take care of you in a fine fashion rather than Joe Public.
Oh, yeah, hopefully so. We got some games this week. We've got, obviously, Florida State plays Boston College. Louisville's going up in a Big Ten matchup against Indiana, so we'll get a chance to see what they look like against other teams. Pittsburgh versus West Virginia should be a good one. Clemson plays Florida Atlantic, but Georgia Tech, Ole Miss. That should be a game that we should be really paying attention to in the Gator Bowl. What about those matchups and those guys is intriguing?
Well, anytime you have the crossover in conference play, it's the only crossover game this week, brings a level of interest. I mean, Georgia Tech has played a lot better. They had a tough loss to Louisville in week 1, but they've got a new coach there. They got a new offensive coordinator. They obviously can score some points. So it's really going to be interesting to see what plays. Ole Miss is coming off a big win at Tulane. So a lot of eyes will be watching that game. But you've got some really games that, Virginia needs to win a game. They're 0-2 now. So you'll start to see some teams maybe separate themselves from not being eligible. There's a long way to go. but you're seeing some big games. I think the LSU Mississippi State game in the SEC is going to be a big game. LSU, can't afford to really lose 2 games overall, but they've got to face a team that barely won last week, but still, that's tough to play Mississippi State.
It's tough when you go into conference. And the last one, we got another Brain Bowl one here. We got Duke versus Northwestern, so that should be fun. But we got, like you said, Alabama going to USF. Not really much that they can gain out of that one, kind of talk, but that should be an interesting one. Florida, Tennessee, though.
Yeah.
Florida's dropped one against Utah, high-ranked team, but Tennessee is 2-0, a lot of hype going into that game, and it's at Florida, so that should be a big atmosphere. So we'll get a chance to see what Florida has and what Tennessee is really about. Early on, Georgia, South Carolina. South Carolina has one of the better quarterbacks that I keep talking about. What's one thing about the class of 2024? These quarterbacks actually look the part. One that doesn't really affect us, Shedeur Sanders. I have to rave about how he's played in his first 2 games, but all the way down to Spencer Rattler. Games that obviously will affect where guys go and who we can get and what that board will look like. That's behind us. So going into that, we got some new predictions. We got some that are saying Miami, Ole Miss would be a very interesting game. Clemson versus Auburn, but we put college football news back up there. Miami versus LSU. That could be a very, very interesting matchup here for us here in Jacksonville. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we've got some. We kind of picked some of the more renowned predictors, and USA Today switched Duke and North Carolina, so now they have North Carolina and LSU. But Clemson's a popular pick. Miami is a popular pick. You've got LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss on the other side. Won't really get into ESPN picks much because that changes really frequently as well there. But any one of those teams presents tremendous opportunities here. So I think we're excited about where things are trending, and one of those is going to be right, or a mix of them, obviously. So certainly that board will change weekly, but you've got some big games this weekend that will certainly change that board.
Yeah, especially again, we're talking about quarterback matchups. You have with the Miami LSU, Tyler Van Dyke, Jaden Daniels, or Drake May. Jaden Daniels, that would be something that at least will get eyes to the game. Everybody, we have the AP polls that are up. Florida State's ranked high. I just want to be able to drop that nugget there again. But as we're getting more of these polls and games are getting played, people's original college football playoff predictions start to shift a little bit. If the season were to end let's just say our predictions for next week were to end after week 3, who would be the 4 teams that you think would be in the college football playoff?
Well, I think Georgia up there. You've got Michigan and Florida State. Of course, Michigan's got to play Ohio State towards the end of the year. That may be their toughest game. Florida State, they've got that game with Clemson. They've got the tougher ACC games at home this year, so they've got a chance to really run the table. So really you look at who could run the table. And then you've got teams, you got Southern Cal in there. You can't dismiss Ohio State because they've got to play Michigan. I think they play in Ann Arbor this year. Penn State fights in there too, but they've got a tough road to hoe. So Notre Dame really looked good. I mean, they've got a schedule that can certainly lend itself to maybe an undefeated season. But you're seeing some things that, again, teams that get that one loss, they're already behind the 8 ball. They have no margin for error. So if a team has 2 losses, you can pretty much write them out of the top 4. And maybe they would be placed in their New Year's Day bowl or a bowl below that. So you'll be able to tell a lot of things that happen if a team has 2 losses that might have been in the top 4 prediction.
All right. Well, next year that would be kind of changed too with the expansion of the college football playoff and things of that nature. But all right, that does it. Week 3 coming up. Some exciting games on the docket that can definitely affect the Gator Bowl. Make sure you tune in to hear the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl Drive to Selection presented by Toyota each and every week with me, Big Game James _36, and Greg McGarity. We'll see you guys next time.
Welcome back to another Off the Field segment. I think we're into week 3 of college football. We are super casual today as we're loading in for a major event this weekend. Each year, our corporate partners, we call them Chairman's Club members, take a weekend away to network together, and we're loading in for what is the best party of the year. If you're a Gator Bowl Sports member, if you are not a Chairman's Club member, you can just call me. We can make you one. But aside from that, with all of that going on, it's a big football weekend in Jacksonville. We're still working off the field, and this week is focused pretty much solely on education. The thing we're going to talk about is the Gator Bowl Charities Award of Excellence Scholarship. It's sponsored by Momentum Transportation. It is now open to high school seniors who are student athletes. They need to visit TaxSlayerGatorBowl.com to apply. It's a $2,500 scholarship that we give to 4 student athletes. They'll receive that award at our holiday party in December and then be recognized on field at this year's TaxSlayer Gator Bowl game. Again, the scholarship's open. There's probably a link down below that you can share with friends and family who may have senior student athletes. And then there's something else happening this week.
Yes, so another application was open this week, and this one is for the teachers rather than the students. So we are in our 3rd year of the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl Most Valuable Teacher Program presented by FIS and in partnership with the College Football Playoff Foundation. This is our way of giving back to the best playmakers across Duval County public schools. So each week throughout college football season, we surprise the teacher with $1,000 to use in their classroom. Teachers in Duval County, DCPS, you can apply by clicking below. If you know a teacher, feel free to either send it to them, or new this year, we've launched a nomination form as well. So if you know a great teacher, you can nominate them. Tell us why you think that they deserve to be one of our weekly MVTs. And like I said, we'll surprise one teacher a week in their classroom, which is a lot of fun. And then we also invite all of those teachers to be our guests at the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl and be recognized on field. So we've got a lot going on. Those are 2 of our key programs that we wanted to highlight this week. Next week, we're going to talk to you a little bit more, again, about teachers. It's the College Football Playoff Foundation's Extra Yard for Teachers Week, which is a whole week of celebrating teachers across the entire nation. So we'll talk to you more about that next week. We hope you have a good weekend, and go Jags.